And joining me now, Rachel Maddow, the host of the Rachel Maddow Show on MSNBC. Rachel, it's great to see you during the day. Well, first let's talk about Sarah Palin versus Al Gore. Sarah Palin on her Facebook page and in this op-ed in the Washington Post today, she writes, this ClimateGate scandal obviously calls into question the proposals being pushed in Copenhagen. Without trustworthy science and with so much at stake, Americans should be wary about what comes out of this politicized conference. Her Facebook entry says, Mr. President, boycott Copenhagen. How do you rationalize the deniers and the impact that they're having?
Well, the political choice that I think people on the right have to make about climate change is whether or not they're going to acknowledge that climate change exists, acknowledge the scientific consensus that's pretty unassailable on climate change, and then say that they have a difference of opinion about what to do in terms of responding to it, or whether they're going to sort of go off the deep end and just say, we don't believe the problem is real, and become a denialist about it. And it seems like the denialists actually have the momentum within the Republican Party among ambitious Republicans. I think that Jim Inhofe sort of leading the charge on that has weirdly helped him politically within the Republican Party. I don't think that's a good sign for us being able to make constructive progress on the issue as a country, or even being able to have a constructive debate. It'd be nice if everybody conceded the facts and we could start there.
Do you think that Al Gore was saying, making excuses, you could argue, for President Obama, saying, look, he's got to take this only so far because there's no point in going beyond what the Senate wants to do. Right. But then again, the president chose health care as his signature issue. He had to face all of those other problems on the economy, which he inherited in, a mess. Mm-hmm. But now the Senate hasn't even acted.
The White House, remember, that they thought that health care would be done by August. So I think that in terms of setting out their first, at least that's what they say. And certainly when you speak with White House officials, they express profound regret that it went so far beyond August and that it's still not resolved. So they may have set up their priorities on a slightly more ambitious legislative calendar than they should have reasonably expected. But it is true that you can't promise more than the Congress can deliver. But if the Congress is going to be mired in denying the facts before you can even get to debating the policy, then it's not going to be a bipartisan policy. That's actually a little bit easier to do because you just push it through with all Democratic votes.
Let's talk about Afghanistan because there's more testimony today. General Petraeus on the Hill. Let's look at what he had to say about the whole time frame. This a day after Hamid Karzai said 15 years, 20 years, whatever. Here's General Petraeus.
Achieving progress in Afghanistan will be hard, and the progress there likely will be slower in developing than was the progress achieved in Iraq. As in Iraq, the situation is likely to get harder before it gets easier.
Now, here you've got the president leaving today for Norway to accept the Nobel Peace Prize, and a coalition of activists has written a letter saying, he shouldn't be getting the prize. He's a war president. He's not a peace president. Fair?
Well, a big coalition of peace activists, including veterans groups and others, saying that this is giving the Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech 9 days after announcing this huge escalation is ironic at best and a lot of other things at worst. Honestly, I think the president's got to figure out what sort of case he wants to make to the country and the world. The goal of the Afghanistan strategy is the eradication of al-Qaeda. The strategy to get there is building up of the Afghan government and the Afghan security forces. Hamid Karzai says, you're going to be paying for our army and our police for 15 years. Defense Secretary Bob Gates sort of reacts to that by saying, I'm not sure that's our timeline. But General McChrystal yesterday admitted to the Senate that the Taliban actually pays people more to fight on their side than we're paying to fight on our side and the Afghan government side in Afghanistan. So it is, you can make
two mercenary armies is basically what we're talking about.
Well, and what's the point? What are they fighting for? Chuck Hagel wrote, I think, a really incisive op-ed in the Washington Post a couple of weeks ago that didn't get a lot of attention on this, but where he raised the major question, win what? What is winning? Obviously, the eradication of al-Qaeda is something that everybody agrees on. But getting there by shoring up an Afghan government is not only an uncertain path to that end, but one that I'm not sure we agree gets us there.
By the way, the president recently named Chuck Hagel to a little-known group known as PITHIAB, the President's Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board. He and David Boren, former senator, president of the University of Oklahoma, co-chairs of that. So he's got some inside influence and also sees all of the intelligence. Let's move on quickly to health care. Harry Reid announces this deal, expanding Medicare, giving up the public option. Howard Dean has endorsed it. Lieberman says so far so so good, they've got the outlines of something. Should progressives say, you know, something's better than nothing, or do you think that
I think progressives need to drive a hard bargain. I think the one thing that liberals frequently forget in political negotiations is that you need to ask for more than you expect to get. And I think conservatives are better at remembering that lesson than liberals have been. And so giving up the public option, I think, does hurt liberals and ought to hurt liberals in terms of the ideological goals for what healthcare reform is all about. But public option got whittled down to something so weak, so puny in terms of its policy impact, that giving it up won't have that much of a real-world effect on what healthcare really looks like. That said, politically, they ought to get some big concessions for it, and a big expansion of Medicare, a big expansion of Medicaid would be the sort of thing that I think would make liberals happy.
Now, I've got to ask you, I was watching last night and almost fell out when I watched your interview with Richard Cohen.
Yeah.
Talk about deniers. And now I've been following on Twitter, and what a storm over this interview with this man. You're talking about Richard Cohen, the author of, quote, Coming Out Straight, Understanding and Healing Homosexuality, close quote, is the title. He's also the head of the International Healing Foundation, whatever that is, which claims to be able to turn gay people straight. Let's play a little bit of your interview.
Okay. Let me also just read to you from your book, okay, page 49. Homosexuals are at least 12 times more likely to molest children than heterosexuals. Homosexual teachers are at least 7 times more likely to molest a pupil. Homosexual teachers are estimated to have committed at least 25% of pupil molestation. 40% of molestation assaults were made by those who engage in homosexuality. This is the claim that you make in your book that exactly feeds these folks who want to execute people for being gay what they need in order to justify that. Right. Do you stand by what you said in your book?
Actually, you know that one particular quote, when I do republish it, reprint it, we will extract that from it because we don't want such things to be used against homosexual persons.
You know, there's an impact that you have reported better than anyone else because this is fueling the crazies internationally. Explain.
Yes. There's a proposed law in Uganda, which Reuters is reporting this week, is likely to become law, and it could happen any day now. And it would execute people for being gay. Life imprisonment, execution, incredibly draconian penalties.
Capital punishment for being gay.
Yes. And the main proponent of that bill has been pushing Richard Cohen's book, Coming Out Straight. Invited a member of Richard Cohen's organization to come address the Ugandan parliament and to address an anti-gay conference in Uganda, after which really gave rise to this bill. And so while Richard Cohen, I think you would generally discount somebody like that as sort of a quack, and honestly, and somebody's a little bit off the deep end and doesn't need a national television platform. The fact remains he's being very influential. And American conservatives of a specific stripe have been really influential in Uganda and could actually possibly stop this bill from becoming law. They've been influential in that country before. They've so far been unwilling to work to stop this. And I think it's tough for them to justify.
And this guy is making money from his alleged foundation, selling his book, and taking unsuspecting people, families, parents of gay people who maybe are seeking some advice and who think that this is a legitimate advice.
Yeah, I mean, all of the responsible professional associations, the American Psychiatric Association, Psychological Association, National Association of Counselors, have debunked this idea that there's any evidence that you can change gay people into straight people. You really can't. But there's a whole industry of people who prey on the hope that could be possible. This guy's one of the worst among them, and for the low price of $349.95, you can get counseling sessions with him. He's totally unlicensed, totally unaccredited, but maintains himself as if he's some sort of scientific authority. What you heard me quoting to him from his book, all of those statistics are completely made up, attributed to somebody who's been kicked out of every professional association he's ever been in. But these people have this air of pseudo-scientific authority that maybe doesn't play here, but it does play abroad, and it may be responsible for killing people.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Rachel Maddow, what a program. You can, of course, watch Rachel Maddow tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern. And thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Andrea. Your interview with Al Gore is incredible. I have to tell you, you've got some great questions. It's a great dialogue. I love it.